Welcome, everyone. Just as a way of introduction to the name of this podcast, you may have wondered, what is Lioness at the Door? Well, in 2010, Julie Beck said, women are like lionesses at the gate of the home. Whatever happens in that home and family happens because she cares about it and it matters to her. She guards that gate and things matter to that family if they matter to her.
So with that great introduction, welcome to Lioness at the Door. This is a podcast where we discuss timely, healthy habits in our thinking, planning, and doing as we each stand as lionesses at the doors of our homes and our lives. We are just two regular girls talking about daily challenges from a gospel perspective. I'm Amy Rasmussen, a teacher by profession, a wife and mother by choice, an optimist by nature, and happy by design. Today, as always, I am here with my friend, Jacque.
Hi, I'm Jacque Sorensen. I'm a wife and a mother and a certified holistic health coach for women of faith.
Now, something that's been on my mind this week, Jacque, is the idea that our words have, or our words and our thoughts, those words we say to ourselves, have a lot of power. And I was thinking of back when I was a teenager in Sunday school, and I had a teacher who wrote a little card. It was just a very simple drawing on a card and some words. And what the card said is, whether you believe you can or believe you can't, you are right. I think I still have the card, actually, because it was so powerful to me and so meaningful to me, and it hung on my mirror for a long time. And I think that was my first introduction that I can pinpoint to this idea that words matter. And not just words, but our thoughts and our beliefs about ourselves.
Yeah.
And I know that you have some thoughts and ideas and some tools you use to help craft words and thoughts for us to feed our soul so that we can create the life we want. And with that, that means we're going to talk about this whole month. We're going to talk about how our thoughts lead to creating the lives that we want. And we're going to start today by just diving into the idea of declarations. And I'm hoping you're going to tell us, what they are, because that's not a word I'm familiar with. Mm-hmm. And then later in the month, you're going to hear about specific forms of declarations, different ways to discover them, and how to really take this idea of how to start telling yourself what you want to hear so you can make that your life. We're going to give you the tools to do it, to create your own. Today, though, let's start just with a definition for anyone listening who's like me and isn't familiar with this idea of declarations. What are they and why are they powerful?
Yeah, okay. When I was putting this tool together for Lioness health coaching, I was kind of going back and forth between the two words affirmation versus declaration. And I was just kicking around with those and looking at definitions. And one of the definitions on affirmation was actually creating a spell. And I thought, well, it's not really the direction I want to go. So I stuck with declaration. For one thing, it feels very scripturally correct. Mm-hmm. To declare and to take responsibility for our thoughts. Because we're told in the scriptures, if we don't watch our thoughts and then our behaviors that come out of those thoughts, then we get into trouble. Our perspective gets off and we don't see very clearly the truth of who we are and the truth of who God is. So a declaration is simply a statement that you write that is positive and present tense. So it's not something that I'm going to say, wow, I really wish that someday I could be a loving mom, or I could take care of a bad habit that I have, whatever it is, someday I'm going to be whatever. Or So it's not something that talks about you in the future. It's something that talks about you right now. And it's also not negative, like so many of the thoughts that we habitually think.
Mhm.
And the funny thing, there's an author, her name is Janine Roth, and she's written a lot about women and food. In fact, she's got one title is Women, Food, and God.
Okay.
And she's a very colorful writer. But she says, it's so strange that when our thoughts come into our minds, we believe them. We believe the lunacy of the things that we have habitually learned to think.
Mhm.
And it's so true. It's like reading something online. Is it true because it's been put into words? No, it's not.
Right.
But sometimes we feel like that. If someone wrote it, it must be true. But of course it's not. And it's the same thing with our thoughts. So the tool of declarations is a couple of things. One, it is a challenge. It's a challenge to, like Janine Roth says, lunacy. It's a challenge to the things that we heard or are just kicking around in the atmosphere that are negative and ugly, or things that we have, because of fear, we've crafted these ideas about ourselves, and we have labeled ourselves. Maybe we made a mistake when we were in elementary school and we felt dumb.
Mhm.
And maybe that word got stuck in there. And maybe that's what we rehearse every time we make a mistake. It could be a whole bunch of different things, but the negativity is not helping anyone, right? What we're doing with declarations is creating. It's a creation tool. And it's creating a feeling that we want to have about ourselves so that we can continue to move forward, so that we can be in faith and not in fear.
Can
So
I just say something about your word of declarations just as you're talking?
Yeah.
The visual I have in my mind of a declaration that does not come to mind with an affirmation is of a person who has chosen to stand up and plant their feet on solid ground and say,
Yes.
I declare
Yes.
this is whatever. And I really like that. I think it's a very empowering word.
Right.
So anyway, I like that. And the fact that it's also a challenge to those all the negativity that can be so powerful, right? So you need a powerful way to combat that.
Right.
So I really appreciate how you described that it's a challenge to those things.
Good.
Okay.
It's like, if we imagine God creating the world,
Mhm.
and we know that he did that through the power of his word, right? He spoke and the world was.
Yep.
And that is, I think, the whole idea, like you just said, under declaration, it's planting your feet, it's standing up
Mhm.
in your full agenthood.
Yeah.
God gave me the power of choice, and I'm going to use it. He also gave me the power of creation, because I can think and I can decide, I can reason, I can decide what I'm going to be influenced by. And I'm going to know there's a line right here, right? And there's the negative and there's the positive. And I want to be on this positive side of the line. And so I know that I need to watch myself, just meaning if I move into this just natural man, go with the flow, think all the things, then I'm going to be over there. And I don't want to be over there. I want to be creating the life I want. I don't want to be kicking around in misery all the time.
Well, it makes me think of the fact that we are made agents unto ourselves to act and not to be acted upon.
Right.
And on that one side of the line of all the negativity, that is where we live to be acted upon.
Yes.
And on that other side, and declarations just feels like this as well, that is where we act.
Yes. Yes. And how do we know when we're being kicked around? When we're on that side and we're just being kicked around, It's from how we feel. That's how we know where we are, by how we feel. If we feel, I mean, that's a definite feeling of being kicked around, right?
Right.
It's actually feeling, instead of standing strong on your own 2 feet and declaring, it feels exactly the opposite. Like, I have no power here. And I am just at the mercy of what everyone else is doing and saying. And I have no ability to create my own life. That's like the ultimate victim mindset.
Right.
So really, we're teaching ourselves to come out of victimhood and into agenthood. And it is really a powerful shift. How can you know where you are in your thinking? Because we're so used to the negatives that oftentimes we don't hear them at all. And we don't hear them until we're a little way down the road and we start feeling so badly. And then bing, it's the light comes on, like, wait, what was I just thinking about?
Right.
Wait, how did I get to this place? And I've practiced for so long backtracking. Was it this thought? No. What was I just thinking about? No. What did I think about just before that? What did I read? What did I see?
Yes.
What did I hear? Back to that point of choice where I opted in to whatever it was. I accepted it as the truth. But of course it wasn't.
Right.
Because the truth, it says in the scriptures, sets us free. And this victimhood, being in victimhood, is really a form of bondage.
Right.
So that's not freedom. Over here, where we're declaring what we want, deciding, and purposefully, in this case, constructing sentences, using our words to create the feeling that we want. And it's the truth. So as an example, in the 7 Steps seminar, the students have just finished an exercise where they were recognizing negatives in their heads.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so interesting because everyone goes through this process so differently. Sometimes I just talked to one of the students yesterday, and she said, I'm so excited because I've been working on this for a long time, like for years, I've been working on my thoughts. And she said, so with this assignment of actually shining a light on my thoughts, I can see that I'm doing better. I'm doing better than I ever have. I didn't have a lot of really conflicting, negative, demeaning thoughts that I had to take care of. And that was really wonderful to hear, because she's winning that game. She's created new habits with her intention, with her decision that she was not going to put up with all the yuck kicking around.
And just the fact that it sounds to me like that happened in the step of just choosing to pay attention to what I'm thinking, and whether or not it's negative. And if it's negative, then she's able to act at that point, right? Whereas if it just becomes the background music of our lives, we don't notice it, and yet it's feeding our souls a way of being.
Right.
So I love that what was such a life-changing thing happened in probably one of the very first steps of just recognizing that they're there, those negative thoughts.
And really the awareness, and that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing in this chat. That's what we're doing with all of the tools. That's what we're doing in our scriptures. That's what we're doing in our worship. We are becoming more aware. We're taking off the blinders or the habits that keep us just in this autopilot mode, and showing us where we are. I think that's really what we're doing in families too, because one of my declarations this year is that my spouse is my loving mirror. That is a sentence of truth.
Yes.
And he has helped me more than, this relationship is pivotal because he is showing me myself every day. And he's reflecting back to me where I am how I'm behaving, how I'm thinking, how I'm believing. And he's doing it in a loving way.
Right. That's
He's
the key word right there,
yeah,
right? A loving mirror.
right. He's not criticizing me,
Right.
but he's showing me.
Mhm.
And I do the same for him. And it's just the nature of that relationship, which is why I think it's so critical. It's so critical to our working out our salvation, is that critical relationship. So I just lost my train. Where was I going?
While you're finding your train, I want to point out that even in that declaration, I think the truth is that a spouse is a mirror. As spouses, we are mirrors of each other, regardless of what we want to be or not, whether we want to be or not, we are.
Yeah.
But in your declaration, you are recognizing his choice, really, and your choice to see in this way of being a loving mirror.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot different than being a mirror that is one that criticizes and points out every mistake. And that's destructive. Whereas it is inspirational to have a loving mirror, because then you can see.
Yeah.
You can see clearly.
And really, it says so much about us as receivers.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I'm telling the truth about myself and he's reflecting back to me, I can say, oh, yes, I can see that I was acting like a victim when I said that. And I'm sorry. I want to own that. Yep. And then I want to move on. And then the more that I do that, the more I tell the truth, the more likely he is to be that clear mirror for me. And man, your growth just goes up. Anyway, maybe that's tangential, I'm not sure. But so back to the idea of the declaration and the rehearsal of what we want versus the rehearsal of what we don't want. Oh, awareness. That's what it was. Awareness.
Okay.
So we're taking off the blinders of, just how we've gotten into the habit of thinking. And actually, we don't really choose when we're not aware.
Right.
We're not even aware there's a choice.
Right.
In the state, right?
Yeah.
So the more aware we become, the more agents we can become, which is why it's so wonderful for people to be, in relationship with people who are bouncing off where we are. That's how we get an idea. It's kind of like sonar. We know where we are.
Yep.
Because of the people we're with.
Yes.
So
with the student, the class member that you talked about, is she, not that I want to know her declaration, that's personal to her, but is she to the point where she is now writing declarations about those negative thoughts, or is this just the step of awareness and you're not to the declarations yet?
Yeah, we are in declarations, but I think that for her, so the rest of this might be helpful to know. The rest of this exercise of recognizing the negatives is we're doing it with a spiritual lens.
Mm-hmm.
So we're saying, could it be that negative thing that just came into your mind, could it be a fiery dart, as it says in the scriptures?
Mm-hmm.
Could it be a fiery dart? If it is, who knows? Is it something you heard when you were a kid growing up? Is it something that your parents said, or that who knows? But if you treat it, and this is like a visualization is what it is. If I were to see that negativity as a fiery dart, what could I do with it? What could I do as an agent with this negative thing? And so the challenge is, in our 7 steps, is to catch it before it pierces you, before it goes in, before it goes through the door of your mind and you invite it in and sit down and take counsel from it,
Right.
Oh yeah, I am really a horrible mother. Oh yeah, look at all this evidence of, I didn't do that right, and I didn't do this right, and look, the kitchen's a mess, and blah, 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 blah. So instead of inviting it in and taking all that counsel, the idea is to catch it in your mind, just catching it, and you're turning it around and you're putting it in your own bow. And this is the agent part. This is the agent part. And what what that flaming, fiery thing that you turn around, what you shoot back in defense of yourself is the truth. Because what came in was deception. So you're shooting back the truth. And I've had some really incredibly powerful experiences with this exercise. Like I said, it's a visualization that is really, can be really helpful. Sometimes I have to say this caveat, sometimes what we're thinking or feeling is not just a negative thought, it is actually grief. And if you're in a moment of grief, we're not using this visualization.
Right.
We're
Right.
not saying, I never want to be sad. I'm not going to be sad. I'm happy. You know?
Right. Because that's a lie. We have the full range of emotions, right? And we're all about talking to ourselves with the truth. That's what's helpful.
Yes. And we need to process and go through the waves of grief. We need that. And if we don't do it, if something's happened and we need to grieve it and we don't, and we just push it off and push it off and push it off, we get into some really big trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's trying to come up, it's trying to be processed, it needs to be experienced and felt and let go. And we create some really difficult things, situations for ourselves when we resist that. So I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about that, that experience that we all have, whether it's a child that dropped the top ice cream ball off of their ice cream cone and they're having a sad moment. Hey, that's sad, you know? It's the first time you ever had 2 scoops of ice cream.
Right. You're really excited about that.
Yeah. Or it might be that you just lost your family pet, or it might be that someone in your family's passed away, or someone has a really difficult challenge and it's something that you're grieving. And we need to go through that process. So what I'm talking about is questioning the negatives,
Mm-hmm.
questioning those habitual negative things that we think that spiral us down into a hole of discouragement and depression. It's not necessary for us to go there. So, does that make sense?
Yeah. So when you talk about grief, could grief also apply to situations where a young mother realizes that this glorious, amazing vision she had of being able to do 10 million things all at the same time isn't realistic, and so something has to wait a while? Like a dream might have to wait a while.
Mhm.
Or realizing, okay, before this point, I acted in ways that hurt my children, not physically, but like I did yell.
Yeah.
But now that is different. So I can grieve the fact that yes, that happened,
Mhm.
but I don't need to bring into myself, I am a horrible mother because for 2 years now I've been yelling, and now I'm hearing these people, whatever tool you find, about not yelling, and these are really great tools, but I'm lost because I'm a loser and I already ruined the kids. Because I think those are some of the things where we can grieve the fact that we didn't know yet, because we're sad about that. I've been sad about that before. Like, I wish I'd known back then what I know now, but there's no way to know. So are we talking about that kind of grief as well, or only like the big grief of the death of a parent or whatever?
Well, certainly, we need to be kind and gentle with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say that in the moments when we recognize that we've made a mistake, and maybe it's years of mistake, like for me, I've been a mom for a long, long time. And the things that I've learned in the last few years have been extremely liberating, but also have come with that pain of, oh, I wish I had known, like you said. But we have to be really careful because we acknowledge our mistakes, and maybe even more than just to ourselves. Maybe these are conversations that we need to have. But if we go deeply into that, like in a grief state,
Mm-hmm.
we are now out of love. We are not in a loving place then either. The goal is to be in a loving place, right?
Right.
That's the point of not yelling. That's the point of treating our children with respect and kindness while we're teaching them. But if we go into this, this super discouragement of looking back and being so disappointed, I think maybe what you're saying is more disappointment than grief. And the pain of recognizing our own mistakes.
Okay,
But
so when you're talking about grief, you're talking about the deep grief. And that was the clarification I was trying to make. So with your declarations then, when you say in those moments of grief, that's not the time to catch the fiery dart and turn around, that different timing. So can we look at one example before we finish today of like a concrete example of how to turn that fiery dart around?
Yeah, for sure. I've heard lots of them, and they're okay. So here's one. I just ran into somebody who did the 7 steps several years ago. And she said, I'm still using my tools. I said, yeah, I'm so excited. And she said, I had this little, I think she said a dresser in her house that had gotten cluttery. And she said, I just woke up one morning and thought, okay, it's enough of this clutter. I'm going to attack this little area and set it right. And she said, immediately the thought that came was, you're a bad housekeeper. You really let this go. And she said, I didn't even let it get to the 3rd thought before I caught it. And I turned it around and said, one great declaration is, it's okay for me to make mistakes. They only prove that I'm human.
Mm-hmm.
So she got in her mind that feeling of, yeah, I've let this get a little bit cluttery. I'm changing it now. I'm moving forward. Today, I'm moving forward. Today, I'm taking care of this. And just put all that potential garbage and that self-demeaning stuff, just hucked it out. She said, I put it in my bow. I just threw it out and I carefully cleaned at the top of that dresser and moved on.
Yeah.
Because those thoughts they can paralyze us.
Yeah. And what's so telling in this example is that those thoughts came after she'd gotten up in the morning and she's like, enough of this, I'm going to take action. So that's a really interesting thing too, to think about the fact that those fiery darts come at us to put us into that negativity and that victim mode, which will really stop us from being able to be the agent we were prepared to be in the moment. So I think with that example, especially, she wasn't in the depths. She was like gung-ho and ready to tackle something when the thoughts came. Yeah. And so I think that's helpful to realize when we're doing something positive and those thoughts come, we still have to be aware and grab them and shoot them off.
Still seeing ourselves as that agent at the door of our mind. Mm-hmm. I continue to have to make this choice. There really isn't a day that we don't have to do that.
Right. Because
not an hour, right?
Right.
Choice to make.
Right.
Yeah. So pulling it into our awareness, that's what we're trying to do. And that's what the whole point of the visualization is, just pulling it into awareness and seeing the point of choice. I have a choice to make right here. And I'm the agent. This is my life. It's my brain. It's my family. It's my home. This is what I want. And this is the battle. This is where the battle is fought.
Right. Well, I think once again that our words are so powerful. Our thoughts are so powerful. And I think these tools, these declarations and the different ways that you're going to explain throughout this month of how to come up with them, because we're all different, right? So different ways are going to work for different people, can really help us to take off in a positive direction. I think the invitation this week, usually we try and have a menu for you, but I think the invitation this week is 1 menu item long. I guess it's always 2, because 1 menu item is always do whatever you inspired to do today or not do today. That is always a menu item. Right. Excuse me. But I would invite you to just work on your awareness. Just work on your awareness of when the negative thoughts come. And even if all you can do at this point is recognize, wait a minute, I'm feeding myself negativity. I'm not going to do it, and you can at least just stop it, aware and stop, then that will put you in a really good place for next week when we start talking about how to then string the bow, how to turn that around and get the declaration out there and have that power.
Yeah.
We would love to hear from you if you have questions about declarations, or if you're willing to share the negative thoughts that seem to be your longtime companions. Those ones that you think, I did great this week and I really kicked some, but this one just keeps coming. If you're willing to share some of those with us, we'd appreciate it, because then we can tackle them in a forum where you can listen to two outside people making some suggestions about how to go about dealing with those. You can comment on our Facebook posts where we post this episode. You can comment on the YouTube page where you listen to this, or you can always email both of us at jackie.sorensen@gmail.com. And Sorensen is Sorenson, and Jacque is Jacque. So that will hopefully be down below when we post this. And we would just love to hear any of your thoughts from today's episode.
Yep, that would be awesome. Thanks for being with us today.
I'm Amy Rasmussen.
And I'm Jacque Sorensen, and we hope that you have a blessed day. And as Gandhi said, Amy.
Oh, I'm going to say this part.
In
a gentle way, you can shake the world.
There you go. Take care, everybody.
See you next week.